here is Jack Keane, who seems to want to go to where Biden was, and he's trying to pull Trump in that same direction.
So the leverage has got to be, I think, number one, military assistance, and give them the robust air defense systems and the other things they desperately need. Why is that? Because once Putin sees that the United States is still committed to Ukraine, he knows he can't achieve victory. The evidence is already right in front of us. We're 39 months into the war, Maria. 39 long months. That's how much time it took for us to defeat Nazi Germany. And Putin has not succeeded. He hasn't even taken the entire Donbass region, which is what he wanted to take in 2014. So he cannot succeed if the United States is providing military assistance. He knows that for a fact. Second thing, let's issue the crippling sanctions. That is all part of the process.
General Jack Keane, who was the four-star general, the vice chief of staff of the U.S. Army, like whatever it was, 30-something years of experience. And he says that Russia can't win. And if all Trump has to do is to go back and do what Biden did, and then somehow there'll be a different outcome. How does that work?
So there's no material difference here with what's going on from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. I mean, look at what's happening on the ground. Ukraine's continued doing the same hit and run, British and U.S.-backed sabotage operations to derail any potential negotiations. It's kind of obvious the pattern. These types of things are guaranteed to derail negotiations. So Russia knows this. They're not naive. They've been around the block now enough times with the U.S. and two different presidents to sort of work out all the different permutations of what the U.S. and its allies are pretending to do or trying to do already. So what Jack Keane's saying, you're absolutely right, Daniel, is default back to Biden, which is that means this could go on for a very long time. And they think that they can do death by 1,000 cuts with Russia by doing drone swarms. By the way, that was the centerpiece of the British Strategic Defense Review last week, was called Kill Web. And the Ukrainians' operation was called Spider Web and was the exact same program. I don't believe in coincidences like that. That was so I think that's a good indication of where they want to take this conflict. And it does make sense. This is kind of normal U.S. Maximum pressure, long-term regime change kind of operations where we're going to keep the pressure on and we're going to whittle down the, quote, regime. And they think because they managed to do this in Syria and other places that somehow it's going to work with the Russian Federation. I'm sorry. It's a different sort of thing. I think one of the big problems, though, Danny, that has to be addressed is, and you can hear it through Jack Keane and Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal and everybody else, is this kind of, they have their own version of history. They have their own interpretation of the events that brought us up to this point in history. And he's saying, well, Putin wanted to take the whole of Donbass, and he hasn't done that yet. Not articulating the reasons why Russia hasn't taken the whole of Donbass. They also say that Russia's lost 85% of the territory they initially took when they surrounded Kiev back. You see that old trope in March of 2022, and they've only got 18% of the original territory. I mean, these are semantic games that they keep playing, and all of their assumptions are completely erroneous. That Russia's motivation is to steamroll Ukraine and then on to Europe. And Trump is playing this as well, saying, oh, Putin wants all of Ukraine, all of Ukraine. Where did he get this? Was this told to him by Dan Scavino over a beer or McDonald's? Or where did he get this idea? Oh, I heard it from a guy that Putin wants all of Ukraine. One of my buddies, somebody who told me before I clocked out yesterday. I don't know, but you can't run foreign policy like this on talking points that are there is no good policy that's going to come out. You cannot engage in negotiations. There is no strategy. There is no policy, because if the assumptions that you're basing all of your moves and actions on are erroneous and fake and not based on what's actually happened historically, then how can you expect to get any results at the end? This is the difference between this administration and previous administrations. And I'm even going to say that the Obama administration is looking like the Einstein Brain Trust and compared to Trump right now. And Jimmy Carter's administration, I would I would give anything to bring that team back right now.
Wow, that's really saying a lot. And you talk about some of the faulty inputs. I don't know if you saw, I guess it was 2 days ago in the New York Times, they came out and they revealed that the Russian side had over 1 million casualties and the Ukraine side had only 400,000.
That's a big one. That's a really important one, Danny, because the death count, the casualty count, is a big political catalyst to policy, because the U.S. can't domestically say that Ukraine has lost more than Russia, because that's just absolute suicide politically for everything, all the sunken cost into this conflict. So they're telling this lie to each other and to the domestic U.S. and European and intra-NATO conversation. They can't admit the true casualty numbers. They don't want to know the true casualty numbers because it changes the whole picture in terms of getting public consensus and making this a moral war for good versus evil and democracy. Well, wasting 1 million Ukrainian young men at the altar of NATO's vanity project isn't exactly a good sell to democratic Europe either. And that's why
but what is a good sell is that not only has the Ukraine side not as many casualties, but you have caused 1 million casualties on the Russian side, and that sells too. So that is a double benefit for the war hawkers who want to keep this going on. And I agree with you entirely. It's a calculated political decision. I doubt very seriously that was just the Ukraine side, or the New York Times just came up with this idea on their own. I'm pretty sure they were fed it by somebody. I don't know who. I don't have that kind of information. But that also kind of leads back into this third thing on that Trump soundbite I wanted to talk about was the merits, right? So he's coming in along with, and now he's representing the senior European leaders. And he's telling Trump right there, even though he knows for sure that Trump is trying to get this war over, he again in front of the cameras says, yeah, I want you to put more pressure on Vladimir Putin. We want to see if we can help them. And you look at, we did a show on merits earlier today, and we talked about some of his comments where he still has these fantasies, along with others in NATO, that Russia can lose still. And so there's that pressure. The question is going to be, is Trump in charge? Is he going to be able to say and tell him just be quiet and go back to Germany or something? Or is he going to continue to vacillate between all these different ideas? I don't have a good feeling about that.
I think he's going to continue to vacillate, Daniel, because I'm looking at the behavior, record of behavior. I'm looking at the statements from not just Trump, but Marco Rubio, Trump's team, Kellogg, Steve Witkoff, everybody. And I'm seeing this pattern of behavior that shows total incoherence. And I've not heard anything that even remotely approaches the true state of affairs, and from any of them. And maybe there's a few on the sidelines where you might hear some intelligent commentary, and maybe on an interview or something like that. But within the context of the policy making in Washington, I don't see it. So this is a problem, okay? And here's the paradox, okay? Under Biden, NATO was a dangerous leviathan, okay? And under Trump, the hope was, when he came in, the goodwill with him, he came in with a lot of goodwill under him, like a magic carpet, okay? And it was that Trump was going to, bring this war to an end, come to some kind of a decent relationship with a major superpower like Russia, and somehow, this whole Zelensky road show is just going to have to be, this is the final season of Servant of the People. It's over, right? That was the hope, okay? He has extinguished and spent all of that goodwill in 4 months with no tangible results at all. And the problem is the U.S. can't shirk their duties as a world superpower. As the head of NATO, the U.S. cannot leave this to the devices of European smaller and lower and medium tier powers, because history has shown what happens when you do that. And unless the U.S. takes a decisive position with the other major superpowers to come to a stabilizing agreement, the potential for nefarious actors to fill the vacuum of power. And let me tell you, I do not see Trump as a strong leader right now. I see Donald Trump as very weak, okay? Very weak, without strategy, without any clear vision, no U.S. foreign policy, no grand strategy, nothing. It's just that you've got to bend to our will and do what we say. Otherwise, it's going to be trouble and I'm going to be upset. And if you don't submit to my will That's not strategy. That's not policy. That's not foreign policy. So the U.S. needs to step up. If Trump can't do it intellectually, he's got to have a team around him that can pull that off. Not just this, they're balancing plates. They're balancing the Iran talks, plus the Israel-Gaza situation, plus Ukraine-Russia. So there's some big, important plates in the air right now, and they're very close to basically fumbling and dropping all of them.